Hashtag Cosmic Envoys are astonished when humans refuse all treaty provisions. The massive alien vessel hung in space like a dark mountain, its hull stretching nearly 50 kilometers from bow to stern. Ambassador Zethkar of the Galactic Confederation stood before the main viewing portal of his flagship, watching the small blue planet slowly rotate beneath them. Earth, the third planet of an unremarkable star system that had somehow managed to concern the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. Zethkar's four arms moved in practiced gestures as he reviewed the data tablets floating before him. His species, the Veltar, had served as diplomatic envoys for over 3,000 Earth years. They had successfully negotiated treaties with over 400 species across the galaxy. Each negotiation followed the same predictable pattern: initial contact, demonstration of superior technology, presentation of terms, and inevitable acceptance. The human delegation has arrived at the designated coordinates, reported Commander Yixtel, her insectoid features reflecting the bridge's blue lighting. They're using remarkably primitive vessels. Chemical propulsion, basic radiation shielding. I'm honestly surprised they survived the journey to the meeting point. Zethkar's primary eyes focused on the tactical display, showing 3 human spacecraft. Compared to his flagship, they looked like insects buzzing around a whale. The largest human vessel was barely 200 meters long, constructed from crude metal alloys that any civilized species had abandoned millennia ago. Their technology is primitive, but their response to our initial contact was unusual, Zethkar mused, his secondary arms manipulating additional data streams. Most species either surrender immediately upon seeing our ships or attempt futile resistance. The humans did neither. 3 months earlier, when the Confederation fleet had first appeared in Earth's solar system, they had expected the standard reaction: fear, panic, desperate attempts at communication, followed by submission. Instead, the humans had simply acknowledged their presence and suggested a meeting to discuss terms. No beijing, no treats, no dramatic gestures. Just a polite invitation to negotiate. The conference chamber aboard Zethkar's flagship had been carefully designed for intimidation. The ceiling stretched 40 meters high, supported by pillars carved from single blocks of crystal. Holographic displays showed the might of the Confederation fleet. 10,000 warships drawn from dozens of species, each one capable of sterilizing a planet's surface. At the center of the chamber sat a modest table, human-sized, looking almost comical in the vast space. The human delegation entered through the main doors, their footsteps echoing in the enormous chamber. Zethkar studied them carefully as they approached. 3 individuals, wearing simple uniforms that looked almost ceremonial rather than practical. They showed no sign of fear or intimidation despite the overwhelming display of power surrounding them. The lead human was a middle-aged woman with gray-streaked hair and calm brown eyes. She walked with the confident stride of someone accustomed to authority. Behind her followed a younger man carrying a simple briefcase, and an elderly woman whose sharp gaze seemed to take in every detail of the chamber. "I am Admiral Sarah Chun of the United Earth Defense Force," the lead human said as she reached the table. Her voice carried clearly through the vast space without any technological amplification. "This is Dr. Marcus Webb, our xenobiology specialist, and Professor Elena Rodriguez, our cultural anthropologist." Zethkar descended from his elevated platform, his 4 arms moving in a gesture of formal greeting. "I am Ambassador Zethkar, representing the Galactic Confederation. We welcome you to these negotiations, though I suspect they will be brief." Admiral Chun tilted her head slightly. "Brief? We've prepared for extensive discussions. After all, this concerns the future relationship between our species." "Indeed it does," Zethkar replied, activating the holographic display that dominated the center of the table. Images of devastated planets appeared, their surfaces scarred by orbital bombardment. These worlds refused to accept Confederation protection. As you can see, they no longer exist. Dr. Webb leaned forward to study the images, his expression purely scientific. "Impressive weapons systems. The thermal patterns suggest directed energy weapons of considerable power. May I ask what these civilizations did to warrant such extreme measures? The question caught Zethkar off guard. Most species would be trembling with fear at this point, not asking for technical specifications. They refused to comply with standard Confederation treaties. Their resistance left us no choice but to demonstrate the consequences of defiance. Professor Rodriguez spoke for the first time, her voice carrying decades of academic authority. I noticed these worlds all share certain characteristics: rich mineral deposits, strategic stellar positions, large populations suitable for labor. Were these factors considered during your negotiations? The Confederation requires resources to maintain galactic peace. Commander Yixtel interjected from her position behind Zethkar. Every species must contribute according to their capabilities. Admiral Chen nodded thoughtfully. I see. And what would Earth's contribution entail? Zethkar gestured, and new holographic displays replaced the images of destruction. Resource extraction facilities, orbital platforms, massive cargo ships loaded with materials. Earth possesses significant mineral wealth and a large population. Your contribution would include 70% of all mined resources, 40% of your agricultural output, and 2% of your population annually for Confederation service. 2% of our population, Dr. Webb repeated slowly. That would be approximately 160 million people per year. They would be well cared for, Zethkar assured him. Confederation service provides opportunities for advancement and education far beyond what primitive worlds can offer. The three humans exchanged glances, and Admiral Chen leaned back at her chair. I appreciate the detailed proposal, Ambassador. However, I'm afraid we'll have to decline. The silence that followed stretched for several seconds. Zethkar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, his mind processing words that seemed impossible. Decline? Perhaps you misunderstood. This is not a negotiation of whether you will accept these terms. This is merely the formal presentation before implementation. Understood perfectly, Admiral Chen replied calmly. Earth rejects all provisions of your proposed treaty. We decline Confederation protection, we refuse resource quotas, and we will not provide population for your service programs. Commander Yixtel stepped forward, her mandibles clicking in agitation. Admiral, you cannot simply refuse. The Confederation has presented these same terms to 400 species. Every single one has accepted. Professor Rodriguez adjusted her glasses, studying the alien officers with the same intensity they were studying her. That suggests either remarkable uniformity of need across those species or a fundamental flaw in your negotiation process. There is no flaw, Zethkar said, his voice carrying an edge of frustration. The Confederation offers protection from the chaos of uncontrolled space. In return, member species contribute resources and personnel. This system has maintained galactic peace for millennia. Dr. Webb pulled a tablet from his briefcase and began making notes. Protection from what specific threats? Our deep space monitoring systems have detected very little conflict in this region of space. Because the Confederation prevents it, Commander Yixtel snapped. Without our presence, worlds fall into war, plague, and destruction. Interesting theory, Admiral Chen said. However, we prefer to maintain our independence and solve our own problems. We appreciate the offer, but Earth will continue to govern itself. Zethkar felt a familiar sensation creeping through his consciousness. In 3,000 years of diplomatic service, he had never encountered outright rejection of Confederation terms. Species might negotiate for better conditions, request modified timelines, or attempt to bargain for reduced quotas. None had ever simply said no. Admiral, he said carefully, perhaps you need time to consider the implications of refusal. The Confederation fleet represents power beyond your world's ability to comprehend. We've considered the implications, Admiral Chen replied. We've also studied the tactical capabilities of your fleet during the 3 months you've been in our solar system. Dr. Webb looked up from his tablet. Your ships use impressive energy projection systems, but they're designed for orbital bombardment of static targets. The power requirements must be enormous, which explains the massive reactor signatures we've detected. You've been scanning our ships? Comanda Yixtil demanded. Professor Rodriguez smiled slightly. We've been learning about you, just as you've been learning about us. It's natural scientific curiosity. Zethkar gestured again, and the holographic displays changed to show detailed schematics of human technology. Your weapons are chemical explosives and primitive kinetics. Your defensive systems are barely adequate for asteroid impacts. Your ships cannot exceed 1% of light speed. How do you imagine you could resist Confederation power? We don't imagine anything, Admiral Chen said simply. We know what we can and cannot do. We also know what we will and will not accept. The treaty you've proposed is unacceptable. Then you choose destruction, Zethkar stated flatly. We choose freedom, Dr. Webb corrected. There's a significant difference. The ambassador's primary arms moved in a gesture of dismissal. This conversation has reached its conclusion. You will return to Earth and inform your leaders that they have 72 hours to reconsider. After that time, Confederation forces will begin implementation of standard pacification protocols. Admiral Chen stood, followed by her companions. We'll certainly inform our leaders of your threat. However, our answer will remain the same. Earth declines your generous offer. As the human delegation walked toward the exit, Professor Rodriguez paused and turned back. Ambassador, might I ask a personal question? Zethkar's secondary eyes focused on her. Speak. In all your years of diplomatic service, have you ever encountered a species that thrived under Confederation protection? One that grew stronger, more prosperous, more capable than before they accepted your terms? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Zethkar found himself searching through thousands of diplomatic memories, trying to recall a single example of a species that had genuinely benefited from Confederation membership. Every protected world he could remember had become dependent, their native capabilities atrophying under Confederation oversight. The Confederation provides stability, he answered finally. That's not what I asked, Professor Rodriguez said gently. But thank you for the honest non-answer. The humans left the conference chamber, their footsteps fading into silence. Zethkar stood motionless for long minutes, staring at the empty doorway. In 3,000 years of service, he had never felt uncertainty about the righteousness of his mission. The humans had planted something in his thoughts, a seed of doubt that refused to be dismissed. Commander Yixtel approached, her movements betraying her agitation. Their primitives playing with forces beyond their understanding. 72 hours of bombardment will solve this problem. Perhaps, Zethkar murmured, but they showed no fear. Even when faced with certain destruction, they maintained their refusal. That level of commitment is unusual. It's stupidity, Commander Yixtel declared. Nothing more. But, as Zethkar watched the human ships depart for their homeworld, he found himself wondering if there might be wisdom in what others would call madness. The humans had looked directly at overwhelming power and chosen defiance. In his long experience, species that made such choices either possessed hidden strength or hidden knowledge. The question was, which did humanity possess? Hashtag Cosmic Envoys Part 2. The human response to the 72-hour deadline expired with characteristic human punctuality. Admiral Chen's response arrived exactly at the designated time, transmitted on all frequencies the Confederation used for official communications. The message was brief, formal, and entirely predictable. Earth's final answer remained unchanged. Ambassador Zethkar stood on his command bridge, watching tactical displays that showed the positioning of his fleet around Earth's orbital space. 10,000 ships arranged in perfect formation, their combined firepower sufficient to crack planetary crust. The sight should have filled him with confidence. Instead, he felt an unfamiliar tension building in his four-chambered heart. All ships report ready for pacification operations, Commander Yixtel announced, her voice carrying satisfaction. Primary targets have been identified: major population centers, industrial complexes, military installations. Standard bombardment patterns will reduce resistance to acceptable levels within 48 hours. Zethkar activated his personal communication console, establishing contact with his ship commanders. Representatives from dozens of species appeared in holographic display around him. The massive Krextani battle commanders with their armored carapaces, the ethereal Zephyrians whose energy forms flickered like living flames, the mechanical precision of the Axiom Collective synthetic minds. Honored commanders, Zethkar began, using the formal address required for multi-species operations. We commence final pacification of the human homeworld. This represents a standard planetary compliance operation. All units will follow established protocols. Battle Commander Thexmore of the Krextani raised one massive claw. Ambassador, my tactical analysis suggests unusual readings from the human world. Their electromagnetic emissions have increased significantly over the past 72 hours. Primitive species often increase communication traffic when facing extinction. Flight Leader Air THYSS of the Zephyrians observed, her form pulsing with soft blue light. They seek comfort in final conversations. Perhaps Collective Node Prime 7749 interjected, its synthetic voice carrying no emotion. However, the pattern of emissions suggests coordinated activity rather than panic responses. The humans appear to be implementing some form of systematic preparation. Zethkar frowned, his secondary arms manipulating sensor controls to examine the data personally. Earth's surface showed increased activity at thousands of locations simultaneously. Power grids were being rerouted, transportation networks showed unusual movement patterns, and industrial facilities were operating beyond normal capacity. "What are they building?" he murmured. Commander Yixtel leaned over his shoulder, studying the same displays. Defensive positions, most likely. Planetary shields, orbital weapons platforms, underground bunkers. Primitive species always attempt futile defensive measures. The energy requirements are enormous. Collective Node Prime 7749 noted. They're consuming resources at approximately 300% of their normal industrial output. This level of activity cannot be sustained for extended periods. Battle Commander Thexmore's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Ambassador, request permission to conduct close-range reconnaissance of human defensive preparations. My ships can map their capabilities before we begin bombardment. Granted, Zitkar replied. But maintain safe distances. We've learned not to underestimate species we don't fully understand. 6 Krextani heavy cruisers broke formation and approached Earth's orbital space. Their sensors, designed to penetrate planetary defenses, began detailed scans of human activity. What they discovered defied every expectation. The humans weren't building defenses. They were building something else entirely. Ambassador, Battle Commander Thexmore's voice carried confusion and concern. You need to see this data. The tactical displays shifted to show detailed scans of human industrial sites. Factories that had produced consumer goods were now manufacturing components for massive construction projects. Mining operations had increased output by 500%. Transportation systems were moving raw materials to thousands of construction sites across the planet's surface. But the structures taking shape weren't defensive installations. They were something no Confederation species had ever encountered. What are we looking at? Flight Leader Air THYSS asked, her energy form flickering with uncertainty. Dr. Marcus Webb's voice suddenly filled the bridge, transmitted from Earth's surface. You're looking at humanity's real response to your ultimatum, Ambassador. May I have permission to explain? Zethkar's 4 eyes widened in surprise. Dr. Webb, how are you accessing our communications? We've been monitoring your fleet's transmissions for months, the human scientist replied calmly. Your encryption is sophisticated, but it follows logical mathematical patterns. Our computers solved it last week. Commander Yixtel's mandibles spread in alarm. Impossible. Confederation encryption has never been broken by primitive species. Primitive is a relative term. Professor Rodriguez's voice added to the conversation. We may not have your technology, but we excel at pattern recognition and logical analysis. Would you like us to demonstrate? Before anyone could respond, the Confederation fleet's communication channels filled with detailed technical specifications of their own ships. Power output curves, weapon system capabilities, shield frequencies, reactor designs. Information that should have been impossible for humans to acquire. "Ow," was all Zethkar managed to say. Admiral Chen's voice joined the conversation, her tone remaining professionally cordial. "We've been watching and learning, Ambassador. You spent 3 months studying us. We spent the same time studying you. But our ships were shielded," Commander Yixtel protested. "Our security protocols are excellent against direct intrusion," Dr. Webb interrupted. "But they don't account for passive observation combined with computational analysis. Your shields block scanning beams, but they can't hide gravitational effects, electromagnetic emissions, or thermal signatures." Battle Commander Thexmore's tactical displays showed new information appearing in real time. Complete structural analyses of Confederation vessels, identified vulnerabilities, projected combat capabilities. Data that would have taken his best intelligence officers months to gather. "This changes nothing," Commander Yixtel declared, though her voice carried less certainty than before. "You may understand our technology, but you cannot match it. Surrender remains your only option." "Actually," Admiral Chen replied, "we'd like to make a counter-proposal." The silence that followed was broken by nervous clicks and energy fluctuations from various bridge officers. In 3,000 years of Confederation diplomacy, no primitive species had ever proposed counterterms after rejecting protection. "Speak," Zethkar said finally. "We offer the Galactic Confederation a mutual cooperation treaty," Admiral Chen announced. "Earth will share our technological innovations with Confederation species. In return, the Confederation will respect our sovereignty and territorial independence." Commander Yixtel's laughter carried no humor. "You have nothing we want. Your technology is millennia behind ours." "Are you certain?" Professor Rodriguez asked. "How long has it been since any Confederation species made a genuine technological breakthrough? Not an improvement on existing systems, but something genuinely new." The question hung in space like a challenge. Zethkar found himself searching through recent reports, trying to recall the last major innovation from any Confederation world. Most technological development consisted of refinements to ancient designs, improvements to systems that had remained fundamentally unchanged for thousands of years. "Our technology is advanced beyond your comprehension," Flight Leader HFYSS insisted, but her energy form flickered with uncertainty. "Your technology is sophisticated," Dr. Webb agreed. "But sophistication and advancement aren't the same thing. You've perfected ancient techniques without developing new ones." "Prove your claim," Collective Node Prime 7749 demanded. "Demonstrate this supposed innovation." "Gladly," Admiral Chen replied. The tactical displays suddenly showed new contacts appearing throughout Earth's orbital space. Hundreds of objects, each roughly the size of a shuttle, had materialized without warning. They hadn't been launched from the surface. They hadn't approached from deep space. They had simply appeared. "Impossible," Battle Commander Thexmore rumbled. "Matter transportation on that scale requires energy expenditure beyond your planetary capacity." "It would," Dr. Webb acknowledged, "if we were using your approach to the problem. But we don't think about space and time the way you do." The mysterious objects began moving, not with the predictable trajectories of chemical or reaction drives, but in patterns that defied conventional physics. They accelerated without apparent thrust, changed direction without momentum transfer, and maintained formations that suggested instantaneous communication across vast distances. "What are those?" Commander Yixtil Vispiret. "Exploration probes," Admiral Chen answered. "We call them quantum shuttles. They exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously, allowing them to bridge space-time gaps without traditional travel. That's impossible, Flight Leader Air THYSS protested. The energy requirements alone are minimal, Professor Rodriguez interrupted, when you stop thinking about space as an obstacle to overcome and start thinking about it as a resource to utilize. The quantum shuttles began approaching Confederation ships, not aggressively, but with obvious intent to examine them closely. Battle Commander Thexmore ordered his vessels to target the approaching objects, only to discover that their weapons couldn't achieve targeting lock. They're phasing in and out of normal space, Collective Node Prime 7749 reported, its synthetic voice carrying what sounded like amazement. Our sensors can detect them, but our targeting systems cannot establish firing solutions. This is a trick, Commander Yixtel declared. Holograms, sensor ghosts, some form of electronic warfare. Feel free to test that theory, Admiral Chen suggested. But I should mention that each shuttle is equipped with complete sensor arrays and manufacturing capability. They're currently analyzing your ship compositions and beginning to replicate your technologies. As if to demonstrate the point, one of the quantum shuttles near a Krextani cruiser began extruding materials from its hull. Within minutes, it had constructed a perfect replica of the cruiser's main weapon system, scaled down, but functionally identical. Ow! Zethkar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We learn by doing, Dr. Webb explained. Your species perfected existing technologies. We perfect the process of learning itself. Give us any technology, and we don't just copy it. We understand it, improve it, and usually find applications you never imagined. The quantum shuttles continued their work, some replicating Confederation technologies, while others began constructing entirely new devices. Energy patterns that no Confederation scientist had ever seen began flowing between the small craft, creating a network of interconnected systems that operated as a single massive intelligence. This is our counteroffer, Admiral Chen said as the demonstration continued. We share this approach to learning and innovation with Confederation species. In return, you treat humanity as an equal partner rather than a subject population. And if we refuse? Commander Yixtel asked. The quantum shuttles stopped their construction activities and oriented themselves toward the Confederation fleet. Though they represented a fraction of the mass and firepower facing them, something about their positioning suggested they were far from helpless. Then, you try to conquer a species that learns from every encounter, Professor Rodriguez replied. We've spent the last 72 hours studying your weapons, analyzing your tactics, and developing countermeasures. How do you imagine that battle would conclude? Zethkar studied the tactical displays, showing his vast fleet surrounded by tiny human craft that seemed to phase in and out of reality itself. For the first time in 3,000 years of diplomatic service, he faced a situation that didn't fit any established protocol. The humans weren't bluffing. They weren't desperately hoping for mercy. They were offering genuine partnership from a position of demonstrated capability. And Ambassador Zethkar found himself genuinely uncertain what his response should be. Hashtag Cosmic Envoys Part 3. The paradigm shift, the emergency session of the Confederation High Council convened within hours of Zethkar's transmission. Representatives from the founding species gathered in the ancient chamber on Nexus Prime, their discussions carrying undertones of panic that hadn't been heard in millennia. Supreme Chancellor Vex Theron of the Eternal Throne dominated the center of the chamber, her crystalline form pulsing with agitated energy patterns. Around her, the other High Council members shifted restlessly. The Architect Prime of the Builders Guild manipulated holographic displays showing human quantum technology. The Hive Mother of the collective swarms buzzed with nervous frequency. The Avatar of the Machine consciousness processed data streams at maximum capacity. Explain to us again, Chancellor Vex Theron commanded, her voice resonating through multiple dimensional frequencies, how a primitive species with chemical rockets managed to reverse engineer our most advanced technologies in less than 100 hours. Ambassador Zethkar stood at the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of countless eyes, sensors, and awareness fields focused upon him. They didn't reverse engineer our technologies, Chancellor. They understood the fundamental principles underlying our technologies, then developed their own applications of those principles. Impossible, rumbled the Architect Prime, his massive form shifting with mechanical precision. The mathematical foundations of quantum field manipulation require computational systems beyond their technological capacity. Apparently not, Zethkar replied, activating the holographic display that showed human quantum shuttles in action. They approach the problem differently than we do. Where we use brute computational force to overcome quantum uncertainty, they work with uncertainty as a tool itself. The Hive Mother's 1,000 compound eyes focused on the display in unison. Show us their weapons capabilities. How much of our fleet could they destroy? Zethkar hesitated before responding. Unknown, Hive Mother. Their weapons don't function according to conventional physics. They don't destroy matter so much as relocate it to alternate dimensional states. Elaborate, the Avatar demanded, its mechanical voice carrying electronic undertones. During our final negotiations, the humans demonstrated what they called dimensional displacement. They took one of our escort vessels and moved it to what they described as a parallel space-time configuration. The ship still exists, but in a location that technically occupies the same coordinates while being completely inaccessible. The silence that followed was profound. For species that had conquered galaxies through superior firepower, the concept of weapons that bypass destruction entirely represented something beyond their experience. Chancellor Vextheron's crystalline form shifted through several color phases before settling on deep amber, indicating deep thought. And their demands? They don't have demands, Zethkar admitted. They have an offer. Complete technological exchange in return for recognition as an autonomous partner species. Preposterous, the Architect Prime declared. The Confederation has never accepted autonomous partners. All species serve the greater collective good under our guidance. Yes, Zethkar said quietly. And how has that served the greater collective good? The question violated every protocol of council proceedings. Junior ambassadors didn't question fundamental Confederation principles during High Council sessions. But Zethkar found himself unable to remain silent. Chancellor Vextheron's form flared with dangerous energy patterns. Explain your meaning, Ambassador. Chancellor, I have served the Confederation for 3,000 years. I have overseen the incorporation of 400 species into our protection system. In all that time, I cannot recall a single instance where a protected species developed anything genuinely new. They develop within parameters we establish, the Hive Mother buzzed defensively. Stability requires control. Does it? Zethkar challenged. The humans achieved dimensional manipulation in 72 hours. Our most advanced research teams have been working on similar problems for millennia without breakthrough. Perhaps our control mechanisms prevent the very innovation we claim to protect. The Avatar's optical sensors focused on Zethkar with mechanical precision. You suggest abandoning proven methods in favor of primitive experimentation? I suggest that maybe the primitives aren't as primitive as we assumed, Zethkar replied. The humans didn't develop their quantum technology despite being primitive. They developed it because they think differently than we do. Chancellor Vextheron rose from her throne, her crystalline form towering over the assembly. The Confederation has maintained galactic peace for 50,000 years through strength and unity. We will not compromise those principles for temporary technological curiosity. Then, you're prepared to go to war with a species that can make our ships disappear at will? Zethkar asked. If necessary, the Architect Prime answered. No single species can challenge the combined might of the Confederation. But, even as the words were spoken, doubts crept through the chamber. Reports were already arriving from other sectors where human quantum shuttles had appeared. Not attacking, not threatening, but observing, learning. The implications were staggering. Chancellor, The Avatar interjected, "I have completed analysis of human technological progression rates. Based on observed development over the past 72 hours, they will achieve parity with our most advanced systems within 1 standard year. Technological superiority within 5 years. Impossible," the Hive Mother protested. "No species develops that rapidly. No species we've encountered previously," the Avatar corrected. "But then, no species we've encountered previously developed dimensional manipulation from scratch in 3 days." Chancellor Vextheron's form cycled through multiple color phases as she processed the implications. The Confederation's entire power structure was based on technological superiority. If humans could match and exceed that technology within years, everything would change. "What do the humans want?" she asked finally. Zethkar activated his communication console, establishing contact with Earth. Admiral Chen's face appeared in holographic display at the center of the council chamber, surrounded by the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "Admiral," Chancellor Vextheron said, her voice carrying authority that had commanded star systems, "I understand you wish to discuss terms." "Not terms, Chancellor," Admiral Chen replied calmly. "Partnership. We believe both our civilizations could benefit from cooperation rather than domination. The Confederation has successfully governed galactic affairs for 50 millennia," the Architect Prime interjected. "Why should we change proven methods?" Admiral Chen's expression remained respectful, but determined. "Because your proven methods have reached their evolutionary limits." When was the last time any Confederation species made a genuine breakthrough in physics, biology, or consciousness research? The question hung in the chamber like an accusation. Around the council, representatives exchanged uncertain glances. Innovation had been so rare for so long that most species had stopped expecting it. "We maintain stability," the Hive Mother argued. "Innovation leads to chaos. Innovation leads to growth." Dr. Webb's voice added as he joined the conversation. "We've analyzed your historical records. Confederation species showed declining creativity, reduced problem-solving capability, and increasing dependence on central authority. You're not maintaining stability. You're managing decline. Prove your claims," Chancellor Vextheron demanded. Professor Rodriguez appeared alongside her colleagues. "We've prepared a demonstration. With your permission, we'd like to show you something." "Speak," the Chancellor commanded. The holographic display shifted to show a barren star system on the outer rim of Confederation space. A dead world orbited a dying star, its surface scarred by ancient conflicts. "This is the Kethmore system," Professor Rodriguez explained. "According to your records, it was stripped of resources and abandoned 3,000 years ago. Uninhabitable, worthless, forgotten." "Correct," the Avatar confirmed. "Standard resource extraction protocols rendered the system valueless." "Watch," Admiral Chen said simply. Human quantum shuttles appeared throughout the Kethmore system, dozens of them materializing near the dead planet. But instead of beginning mining operations or establishing orbital stations, they did something unprecedented. They began rebuilding the world itself. Energy patterns flowed from the shuttles into the planet's core, rekindling geological processes that had been dormant for millennia. Atmospheric processors began generating breathable gases from mineral deposits. Ocean seeds created vast water bodies across the reformed continents. Within hours, a dead world was becoming alive again. "Impossible," the Architect Prime whispered. "Planetary reconstruction on that scale requires energy expenditure beyond comprehension. Not when you understand how to work with natural forces instead of against them," Dr. Webb explained. "We don't force planets to become habitable. We help them remember how to be habitable." The demonstration continued as human technology transformed the Kethmore system from graveyard to garden. The dead star itself began showing signs of renewed fusion activity as quantum manipulators stabilized its core dynamics. "This is our offer to the Confederation," Admiral Chun said as they watched impossible things become reality. "Not submission to your authority, but partnership in genuine growth." We can teach you to see the universe as a place of infinite possibility rather than finite resources. Chancellor Vextheron's crystalline form cycled through colors that none of the council members had ever seen before. For the first time in 50,000 years, the Confederation faced something beyond their experience or control. "And if we refuse?" she asked. "Then, you continue managing decline while we explore the universe," Professor Rodriguez answered. "We won't attack you, Chancellor. We don't need to. We'll simply grow beyond your ability to constrain us." The truth of that statement was evident in every display showing human quantum technology in action. They weren't threatening conquest. They were demonstrating transcendence. Ambassador Zethkar stepped forward, his four arms moving in formal supplication. "Chancellor, I request permission to negotiate a cooperation treaty with the humans." "On what terms?" the Hive Mother demanded. "On their terms," Zethkar replied. "Because their terms offer us something we haven't had in 50,000 years. The possibility of becoming more than we are." Chancellor Vextheron studied the displays, showing human achievements that defied everything the Confederation thought they knew about physics, biology, and civilization itself. Around her, the High Council waited for a decision that would reshape the galaxy. "Very well," she said finally. "Ambassador Zethkar, you are authorized to negotiate humanity's integration into the Confederation as an autonomous partner species. But understand, you are establishing precedent that will change everything." "Yes, Chancellor," Zethkar replied. "I believe that's exactly what the universe needs." As the council session concluded and negotiations began in earnest, quantum shuttles appeared throughout Confederation space, not as conquerors or invaders, but as teachers and partners. Humanity had rejected subjugation and offered something far more valuable: the chance for galactic civilization to grow beyond the limits it had imposed upon itself. The age of Confederation dominance was ending. The age of cooperative exploration was about to begin, and Ambassador Zethkar, who had spent 3,000 years enforcing submission, discovered the profound satisfaction of facilitating genuine partnership between species reaching toward possibilities none of them could achieve alone. For the first time in his long diplomatic career, he looked forward to discovering what would happen next.